Hey guys, what's going on?
Nothing much. How
Uh,
about you?
Good. Just doing conferences, living life.
Oh yeah. How are those going?
No, they went well. It's definitely a new format, but it's always good to see the parents and yeah, it's actually
yeah,
it's great.
Awesome. I guess we can just hop right in. So,
yeah.
welcome
Yeah,
everybody
thanks
to
for
the True
sorry,
Falcon
thanks for
TV
being
podcast.
flexible.
It's all good. I'm your host Ethan, and I'm joined by your other host.
My name's Cooper. Hi.
And today we're joined by Mr. MacArthur. So, I guess first of all, what do you teach in the school?
I teach geology, astronomy, meteorology, and earth science.
Awesome. So, when did you like kind of first get into like science in general?
Oh, geez. I probably have been looking through telescopes even before I remember. I mean, my grandfather was into astronomy. My dad was into astronomy. And I remember like looking at Halley's Comet like when I was 8 years old in 1986. So if you do the math, you can figure out when I was born. So I've always been into astronomy as long as I can remember. Sitting in my dad's hall or my mom and dad's house hallway looking at the astronomy books. When is the next solar eclipse? I was ready for the one a few years ago. Um, Meteorology, my dad and I would always watch thunderstorms and we'd chase them. And so always big into that. And geology really became an interest of mine. I would probably say more so in college. I thought rocks were cool, but when I got into college is really when I got into geology. So um, I guess I could say I've always kind of been into this stuff.
Yeah, so it kind of runs in the family, I guess, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
So, I'm just curious, what's your favorite science to teach?
Oh, that's a hard one. Honestly, I was teaching before I came to Highland Ranch High School. I was teaching geography in the middle school level, and when I saw the opportunity to teach earth science, I jumped on it because it incorporates everything that I love. I love geology,
Yeah,
I love astronomy, I love meteorology, and now that I get to teach all the courses independently as electives, I'm in heaven. So it really is hard to say which one is my favorite. Because they all really kind of link together. So
yeah,
sometimes I really like teaching astronomy. Sometimes I think it just depends. I mean, if you talk to students that I had in class, they're like, "Well, Mac loves Pluto. He's absolutely passionate about Pluto." But then you
Yeah.
talk to other students, like, "No, he loves volcanoes." So it's I love it
You
all.
just science in general, you just love.
Absolutely.
So you're the one who runs most of the like the student trips, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing it for a while, so we have a good time.
Awesome. So what are some of like the most interesting places you guys have gone? Because I know Hawaii is a big one, but
Right. Yeah. I started doing the Hawaii trip in 2011. I started there because in my master's program at CU, we did a field study in Hawaii for 2.5 weeks. And I'm like, I have to bring students here. It's like the best natural playground for geology. So I wanted to start there because I'd been there. I kind of knew what to expect. And then as I got more and more comfortable with doing student trips, I'm like, okay, I was at the National Science Teacher Conference learning about glaciers and the Northern Lights. I'm like, where can we do that? So that's how the Iceland trip came about. So Miss Barry and I, we kind of put that trip together, and that's been a real popular trip. Then I'm like, okay, let's get a little crazy. And then we did the Ecuador trip, and that was like
mm,
way out of my comfort
yeah,
zone. So luckily, Miss Volker came along on that one because she was like our Spanish like interpreter, which was huge. And then Miss Hersher, she's not at our school anymore, but she and I were like, well, let's do a joint, performing arts science trip. So then we did the South Pacific trip where we went to Australia, New Zealand, and
oh
Fiji, and we
wow.
got to see a performance at the Sydney Opera House. So one thing that is really important to me about my trips is incorporating not just science, but culture and other things too, because interdisciplinary stuff has always been a huge passion of mine. Showing my students and experiencing things, but also seeing the interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah. So when you guys went to like Ecuador, what did you guys kind
Yeah,
of look at and study down there?
yeah, absolutely. One of the big things about all my trips is doing some sort of I guess, kind of, oh my gosh, community work or community understanding. So one thing we did there that was just phenomenal is we did some community service up in the Andes with the Shuid people up there. And we helped mix cement for laying a floor for a community kitchen. And we also, dug trenches for water pipes. So for me, doing those sort of things is really important, learning about the culture. And when we were in Ecuador, we were all really excited to go to the Galapagos Islands, Galapagos Islands, Galapagos Islands.
Yeah.
But I think we were all really shocked how much we actually really loved being in the Andes in Ecuador. So the Galapagos Islands were cool, but I think we coming from Colorado. It's like, yeah, we live in mountains, but just, it was actually, I think that was the thing that really we all triggered and loved.
Wow. Yeah. And
So
go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just curious, if you could lead a student trip anywhere that you haven't gone before, where would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. So Iceland, I've traveled to a lot of other countries. So I've been to like 19 different countries. And every time I go to a different country, I'm like, okay, what could I do with students here? I mean, I do travel. I'm a nerd. And when I go on my vacations, my wife, she wanted to go to like Paris and London. And I was excited about that. And I'm like, well, I want to go see Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii. And she was interested in that. So I'm always trying to think of cool sciencey things. But one thing that's always kind of been in the back of my head is Japan. You have Mount Fuji, you have, the earthquakes and the volcanoes, and you have just amazing culture there. So Japan is one of those things that's in the back of my mind that maybe someday in the future I could do a student trip to.
Yeah, that would be a really cool student trip to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, speaking of like Mount Vesuvius and stuff, I've been to Pompeii. It's a massive volcano. It's
crazy to see like how that town was just annihilated by that volcano. It's fascinating.
Yeah, all the remnants are still there though.
Yep, and it's still an active site, and they're finding new stuff all the time.
Yeah. So you climb mountains a lot, correct, as well?
Here and there.
So how many have you climbed, or how many 14ers, I guess?
Oh my gosh! So Mr. Hodis and I, we just climbed the Buffalo Peaks over by Fairplay. So I think that puts me in like the mid to upper 50s of the amount of mountains I've climbed. For 14ers, I've done 39 of the 14ers here in Colorado.
Wow.
But the 14ers are getting really crowded. So I'm kind of enjoying just kind of exploring some of the 13,000 foot peaks too.
Yeah, I mean, they're still good mountains, just not the 14er that everybody's drawn to.
Right. I mean, Colorado has like over like some 513,000 foot peaks. So
wow,
you can go and check it out. But and then just seeing the mountains around the world, like Kilimanjaro and then the Himalayas. So hopefully someday I'll get down to the Andes and do some backpacking and hiking through there.
Seriously, yeah. I've been kind of looking at starting hiking, but I haven't really actually gotten into it.
So the funny thing is I really wasn't even a big hiker until about 2008. And it's so the last 12 years is really what I've gotten into it. And I got into it with my kids when they were little, and my sons have done like around 12, 14ers. So it's been something we've been doing together, and it's been pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
So what would you say was probably the most challenging mountain you've ever climbed?
It's a hard one because you're talking, because I've been to Mount Everest Base Camp, and I've done Kilimanjaro, but they weren't overly like hard hikes.
Yeah.
The longer ones, like Long's Peak was a long day. That was like a 14-hour day, so that was relatively long. And there was a peak a few summers ago, Ellingwood Peak, where I had to go through some snow fields. So it's not necessarily, which has been the hardest. It's been every mountain has a slightly different adventure, and I think, the goal is always to get to the top. But, I've had some like 15-hour days on mountains. Like there was a 15-hour day on Kilimanjaro. Then with Everest and Kili, you're at 17, 18, 19,000 feet. So then there's always that to deal with, the altitude and things like that. I think one of my hardest though is, and it wasn't necessarily a hard mountain. It's within a quarter mile of the hike. I fell in a river and I hit my knee on a rock.
Oh.
And like straight up kneecap to the rock. And I was like, oh. But Bryce and David, my sons, were like, Dad, are we going to climb this thing? I'm like, yep, we're going to climb it. So 12 hours and we did it. So that was probably the most challenging because I was kind of injured.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Dang. So you at Everest, you were just at the base camp. You didn't like go up at all.
Right. Yeah. So I don't want to die.
Yeah.
I got, I have a wonderful wife and 4 great kids. And, part of it is like, I want to be there for them when as they grow up. So I actually don't have any desire to actually climb Everest. It's part of it is just because of what I just said, but there's a lot of political tensions with it too. There's a documentary out called Sherpa. And if you watch that movie, I think it might still be on Netflix, but they talk about kind of the controversy with the Westerners, the Sherpa, the people that live in the area, and then the Nepalese government. And there's just a lot of cultural conflict with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember 2 years ago, they showed that line of people on Everest and people were dying in that line.
Really?
Stuck on the mountain because there's so many people on the mountain. Well, that was the same year my buddy and I went to Everest Base Camp. And we had a lot of people ask us, well, why, you're not going to climb it. And that's part of the reason why. There's so many people on the mountain now. It's getting crowded. It's, there's a lot of trash. It's almost,
oh, wow.
It's almost not good for the environment. So I want to see it. I wanted to experience it. I think if I do another high peak, I'd like to do Aconcagua, which is the highest peak in South America. It's like 23,000. So that's kind of one of those in the distant, future.
So I guess everybody wants to be that person to say, I did Mount Everest, and then everybody's crowding there now. Wow.
Yeah. And, the Nepalese government, it's a third world country, so they sell a lot of permits for it. So they make a lot of money, but you also put your life at risk. So the 7 summits, climbing all the big peaks were never a goal of mine. My goal was to hit all 7 continents before the age of 50. So I have one more, Antarctica, and I turn 42 tomorrow. So I got 8 years to do it.
Oh, wow. Happy early birthday.
Thank you.
At least you're going onto this break right around your birthday.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I think we all need it.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, definitely.
So Antarctica's the only continent you haven't been to?
Yep. That's the last one.
Let's see, which countries in Asia have you been to?
Well, I've been to Qatar in the Middle East, and I've been to Nepal. Those are the only 2. So that's why I kind of want to add Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason, I always kind of end up forgetting that the Middle East is like part of Asia still.
Right. And then you forget too, like the Middle East sometimes is even part of Africa, like the northern part of Africa. So it's a weird little region.
Yeah.
So where have you been to in Africa?
I've been to Rwanda and Tanzania. So Tanzania is where Kilimanjaro is. And then my wife and I did some missions work in Rwanda where we worked at a school, kind of helped some of the teachers with some curriculum planning and, just hung out with little kids and it was pretty awesome to see the culture there. And they're so vibrant and so lively and so excited. I was just teaching about water and the properties of water to my earth science class, but I had just ice, and the kids got so excited about it because they've never seen ice. So
because it's so hot there, right?
Yeah, it's on the equator, so
it
doesn't snow in Rwanda. So, and then my wife and I, we did some hiking, some of the volcanoes there. And I mean, the central part of Africa is just so beautiful. I love it there. We were supposed to go back this past summer, but COVID. So.
Yeah. It's on my bucket list to try to at least hit more than just Europe as a traveler.
It really gives you a broad perspective on what there is to see. I mean, you go to Ecuador, people are speaking Spanish, but it's, it's different than like Mexico or Cuba.
Yeah.
I've been to Cuba and it's very different than there. And then you hear, people speaking English in Great Britain or in Tanzania or in Rwanda. It's just so fascinating to to listen to all the different cultures. You know, New Zealand and
bet.
Australia and their English.
Yeah.
Is-
I feel like most Americans just travel to like Mexico and Europe, but then kind of the other continents don't get as much attraction, I guess.
Yeah.
Seems like.
And that's what attracts me to the other continents is going to those places and bringing those experiences to my classroom. Cause like now I can show, like I'm doing a biome unit with my earth science kids right now. I can show them all the different biomes from trips that I've been on. I've been to like a bunch of different volcanoes and I can bring that into my classroom. So big part of traveling for me is bringing those places that I've traveled to and showing my students that these places do exist, you know, seeing the northern lights, poking molten rock with the stick on student trips. I mean, it's all about that experience and experiencing the world, and it does enrich you as a human being. So that's why I love to travel.
That's
Bring it into my
amazing.
classroom.
So,
Go ahead.
well, if you were to have any tips for people looking into serious traveling, what would you say?
You know, I would say, you know, go to the different places. Go to the places that are a little bit off the beaten path. You know, don't get me wrong. Paris, Rome, London, they are beautiful. Cuba. I mean, who would think about going to Cuba? But it was just an amazing place to go. You know, some people get you know, kind of nervous about the African countries because they think they're not safe. But Rwanda was so safe. It's actually the safest country in Africa to travel to.
Really?
When I was in Nepal, nothing about being in Nepal was familiar to me. The smells, the language, it's getting out of your comfort zone is great because it really does allow you to understand the world and eat. I had a yak burger. That was really weird. Fermented shark in Iceland is probably the grossest thing I've ever eaten. And guinea pig in Ecuador. That was different.
Really?
So try local cuisines. So I got to eat with some of our porters when I went to Tanzania, because when you stay at the safari resorts, they feed you a Western food, but we're like, we want to go where you were eating. So we go into the village with them and we ordered chicken and potatoes and they bring it out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm like, where's that chicken that was running around? Oh yeah, we're eating it. So it's those things. So it's just those little experiences that allow you to appreciate the life that you have here and also realize how lucky we truly are in our country. But people around the world too are extremely lucky. The world's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm sure that.
Go ahead.
You go.
Sorry.
You go.
No, go ahead. I was going to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I'm sure that makes the world seem a lot larger than I bet we often think it is, that there's so many different cultures everywhere and so many different cuisines and stuff like that.
Yeah, it really opens your eyes.
It was really weird to be in Nepal because they're 11 hours and 45 minutes difference than us. So when I wanted to call home, you know, I'd be going to bed. My wife would be waking up. So it's, you know, you're on the opposite side of the world, and it took 2 days to get there, which is amazing now if you think about it. So it's, you start realizing how big this planet really is.
Yeah. Well, this is probably a good place to wrap it up. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always good to just get on and just have conversations and not always, you know, talk about school related stuff.
Right. Absolutely. No, it's we live in a great place, and that's why I love teaching what I do, because it's truly a science that you can experience and bring it to everybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Again, thank you for joining us, and thank you guys for watching this episode. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Mahalo. Thank you.